Hello everybody. I'm allow a lot of people to get on yet, but in the meantime I'm gonna start kind of talking about this painting and going over how it's gonna go down. This painting is a lot more emotion and feeling more so than kind of laying down a blueprint for how to achieve specifics, but at the same time, you know, there is going to be a blueprint that I'm laying down, and it's going to take a few videos. It's not all going to be done in one, even though the painting was slightly done in one sitting. There was a lot of wait time I had to throw into it, so I don't want to make this like a 7-hour video. But this will be part 1 today, and I'm going to focus today on the sky and on the water, and maybe possibly on the base of the lighthouse, but I'll come back and do video number 2 on another day to show the rest of it. Not sure what day just yet. I have a couple of days here lined up where I have to complete some objectives outside of painting, so probably be focusing on that. But as soon as I know what day, I will let everybody know, and I'll have it up there on a status as usual. But let's start diving into this here once I have my colors on. Gotta add 2 more colors here. And for this painting, I used a lot. I used a lot of different colors. 2 different blues. I have cobalt, I have phthalo, I have phthalo red, I have bright red, I have white, I have violet, which is just purple. And then I'm gonna have yellow. Probably, I like working with chrome yellow the best. It's pretty bright and vivid, and it can bring your other colors up with it pretty vividly and nicely. So chrome yellow is my go-to pretty usually. I'm already getting my water all messy because these paints have some dried paint all around the edges and whatnot. It gets real sticky, like melted plastic. Alright. So, I have a lot of kind of anger to get out today, just because before this I had a big bout with a lawnmower that I've been having bouts with for the last 3 years now, probably. But all I'm trying to do is reset the wheels so I can drop it down a little bit lower, so I can cut the grass a little bit lower, so that it don't have to do it quite as often, and it'll still be a nice, you know, nice cut, nice buzz cut for the grass. But no matter how many times I've tried to do this, it just does not work. It doesn't work out for me. So lots of money and time and effort and anger. Later, here we are. But I think this will go into my painting today, so that'll make things a little more interesting. So, I guess when I was doing this painting, things that were going through my mind were kind of the current happenings, and maybe more on a subconscious level that was also the case. Because when I'm painting, I'm honestly more worried about what I'm doing and how I want it to come across, more so than I am about, you know, being stressed out and kind of in a chaotic mindset. So whatever comes out comes from both of those places, the subconscious and also the conscious. So maybe this will have some type of ring for everybody, in whatever way that you see it, you know, because it's a lighthouse, it's being washed out by the water, whether that means it's just standing there and the water's going to go away, or maybe the water took it away. I don't know how you view this, but it's a lot of chaos. One thing to note is when I put up the picture the first time, I didn't have all the kind of foamy, the white, all around it, but I came back up when it dried, and I knew I was going to do this beforehand, but I got so excited to post it that I just posted it. So it looks a little different now than it did, the example does, when I first posted it. So I added those, and I feel a lot better about it. I feel very good about the water area, because honestly this painting the whole way through is a little awkward. So let's dive right in. I definitely separated the ideas here with the sky from dark blue to the orange and the yellows and the pinks that are going on down here. So top is going to be dark, bottom's going to be a lot lighter, and I think that helps usher in the lighthouse pretty well, and it sets apart the sky and the ocean that's hitting underneath. So I like to start with the darker phthalo blue. Here are my colors. I forgot to add yellow, but I'll add that in a little bit here since I want to get started. But I'm starting out with this dark blue, and at any moment, I mean, if you wanted, you could throw a little bit of purple in there, or, you know, a little bit of another blue, just to keep it dark. And along the top here, you just take your time and you just kind of fizzle this in by scrubbing it like a scrub brush. And I really didn't work in lines here. I kind of brought this down and I let that be a section of its own, and then I would add maybe another color and make that a different section elsewhere. Or maybe come back with some darker blue again and mix the two together. So it's so open that you can really do whatever you want with this, as opposed to really staying with you know, specific scheme, unless you want to. But you can definitely mix reds and blues and purples to make these darker. And I did that on the palette here. I added a little bit of blue here, added some red. If you want to throw in some purple, I like the violet idea, just because it gives it a little bit more of that. I don't know. It gives a nicer shade of color to me, I think, honestly. You get those purples that almost have that blue tint to them. They're one of my favorite colors, so maybe that's just me, but I like to add kind of the violet aspect here. You can work with whatever size brush you want. I'm working with a large brush right now, but you can flip that over to, you know, a smaller brush if you want. I kind of like to do this in layers. At any point also, you can start adding white. Apologize for my stuttering. Add a little bit of white and bring it up and blend these together. You don't really want them to be super apart, but can a little bit. You can exaggerate your white as much as you want. So, you know, I really wanted to stay super light as it's going downward. You can bring some light up here. Really bounce it around. But it's the same technique. I'm just taking real small strokes of brushing it in like a scrub brush. If you need to rinse out your brush, you can do that to start over with kind of a fresh, lighter white to blend into this as well. Just to keep it lighter. If you continue to blend this down, it's just going to stay pretty dark and kind of almost flatten itself together. So it's good to sometimes rinse that out and then start over. Start throwing in these lighter shades. Just real carefully. It's easy to want to just jump ahead and just cover this whole thing and hurry up with the background, but I like to take my time with stuff like this. This was, like I said, a lot of emotion based, so I really took my time and just kind of added whatever I was kind of feeling at the time. So, you know, if you wanted to stick with more purples along here and, you know, do purples and pinks, you could even do the same scheme with those colors instead of the colors that I'm using. Don't ever be afraid to just kind of go outside the box and add something somewhere else. If you want to just add some red over here, blend that in. This is your sky, and you cannot go wrong with it. Believe it or not, red in the sky, if you continue to just blend it and scrub it and blend it, it's a very good addition. Once again, I'm going to rinse out, and I'm going to go back into the white here and start carrying it down a little bit. And I'm really hoping that this video will just work with me today, and it won't cut off, but in the case that it does, I apologize. No idea why it does that, but I will be right back on with the video again as soon as I get that worked out. So, you know, I might be off for a minute or two. I might not realize that it shut off, but once I realize, I'll be back within probably 2 minutes. So, apologize if that happens. I hope it doesn't. But if so, I appreciate the patience and the understanding and, you know, bearing with me as I try to get it to work up again. Alright, so I'm going to dip in my other blue. I kind of want to add a few variations here of the blue. On the original, I didn't add this blue around the sky, but today, I think, you know, I'll switch it up a little bit and I'll add it. And I like to just think soft like the clouds, you know, up here it's just soft. It's real nice, real beautiful, it's real calm up in the sky. Not so much down under, but up in the sky, that's where you usually look when things are hard and you just need some peace of mind for a minute. So that was my thought and feeling for the sky. Just a real calm, peaceful place. It's got a lot of colors. It's got a lot of just sound with these colors, and they speak for themselves. And it's so important to convey that. Now at any point, you can start adding some other colors here. I'm going to add some phthalo red to start out with. But, you know, if you want to do yellows or red or orange, which is a mix of either of the reds, you can do that. Just stay more on the yellow. Don't be afraid to just dive in and start adding things. I still like to stay around with the white as well. The white's gonna keep everything, so it's not so it's not such a harsh change. It's still pretty soft, so still gonna work with some white to let that blend out. It's another form of blending, and it doesn't have to go all the way across. You know, I'll keep the pink here, and then I'm gonna add some yellow here on the other side and let that kind of do its own thing. I don't really feel like this is a linear kind of painting. I don't feel like it has to stay inside these boundaries of, you know, layer, layer, layer. You know, it could really just, this could be something, this could be something. And I am going to go back once this dries over top of it with another layer of other things going on. So that's what made everything here happen in the back in the sky. Let me add this to my plate real fast. And you have a choice, you know, if you want to add yellow just to your brush, that's what I'm going to do. But if you didn't want to do it that way, you can clean out your brush and start adding yellow, you know, just by itself over here. But I kind of like the blend, like I was saying, of the pink to the orange idea. Just scrub brushing that in. Getting some more white up here. White's going to be, you know, something that I do stick with throughout pretty consistently, just to keep everything in balance. But other than that, everything is so free game with what you can do with your sky. You can even, if you wanted, you know, add a little bit of purple right in this area. A little bit of pink with that, this phthalo red. I call it pink because it looks so pink to me. Phthalo red though, it's phthalo red. Can really add some nice values with this. And notice I'm not connecting it down here. I'm just gonna let it kind of free fall. Rinsing out my brush again so I can add white and blend that in. And you don't have to blend everything. I mean, if you wanted to leave some of these clusters alone so that they're over top of others, you know, that's totally your prerogative. If you like some clouds over top of other clouds and everything. One thing I notice really is that everything's kind of coming to this point. And this point is where the lighthouse is going to be. So I have kind of this direction going from this side. I got this direction going from this side. I have this pointing downward here. Totally up to you if you want to do that. I kind of like that. For this, it gives it, you know, it directs you kind of where you need to be. Directs the eye and kind of tells you the story, so you don't have to guess. But like I said, continue to add. You can add some yellow and white up here a little bit. This is your creation, so go with it. Go with what your gut is telling you to do. That's all that I do. I'm going to stick with a lot of yellow down here now. Maybe a little bit of red. It kind of gives it that sense of urgency. I almost feel like when you go from yellow to red, that sunset is almost like an urgent, hey, it's going to be night, you know? Or maybe even that feeling of just whatever. It's usually like an urgency or something real loud. It's really loud. Okay, so I like to carry this down, you know, pretty much down here. Let me kind of mark that with the yellow. Down to here, because I don't know how much is going to be covered up here with the water. So I want to take my sky down far enough where it can be consistent. It's not going to leave any gaps. It's not going to leave anything uncovered by the paint. I definitely want to make sure that stays true. So I bring this guy further down than anything else that I'm going to be working with. Maybe besides the lighthouse. The lighthouse I might also kind of bring down a little further. You can't really tell, but it is down here in this section, and I covered over top of it. But that makes it more consistent. You know, if you see through that water a little bit and you see the lighthouse, it just makes it a little bit more realistic. because sometimes that's the case. You know, the water's is thin enough, it's see-through, so you're gonna see a little bit. Feel free to add some white down here as well if you like, all through here if you like. And even add a little bit more red. But the sky is really, you know, you could really let it take you wherever it's going, because it's a nice feeling. It's a nice smooth series of transitioning, just kind of scrubbing it in there. I like the gold hues of it as opposed to just real bright yellow. So I'll leave, you know, a little bit of red or whatever, phthalo red or whatever color that I was using, usually along the reds or the phthalo red, just to keep it a little bit more goldish. I think the red kind of has more, got a little bit more. What am I thinking of? It's got more of that kind of royalish gold than I think the phthalo would, and I'll kind of show the difference here. Like this will kind of tone it to super orange, whereas the red will tone it down a little bit more to that nice gold. Yeah, you can kind of see it's real orange now. So with the red kind of takes it just to a gold, nice gold. So it's good to know, you know, what your paints are gonna do to another color in here. Okay, so we got a lot of colors going on in the sky right now. I am gonna add some more white just to mix it up some. After this, I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna work somewhere else. Not sure where it'll be just yet, but I'm gonna think about it. And there are times I like to leave some, you know, heavier streaks of a color, which is also why it took longer for the example painting to dry. Just leave some streaks here and there to make the clouds work the way that I need them to. And if you want, you could even come underneath some of these clouds and add a shadow. You just follow kind of where you see the edge lines of them, but still keep it real soft. You don't want to just break it with a harsh line. You really want them to kind of flow into their design, to their different shades here. Feel free to even add, you know, some obscure colors. I'm going to add a little bit of a dark blue with the red mixture on some of these. I'm going to take a trip to a smaller brush as well. Smaller brushes will allow you to have a little bit more space to work with. Uh-oh. Ruining my list for Wednesday. Okay, so let me find my brush that I need. This one right here. Alright, so I'm gonna go with this brush right here. Kind of mix that in. If I lose some of that color, that's alright, because I can always grab more and add more. it's the same technique. I'm just scrub brushing these areas in. They're a little bit more soft, retain their value. You could even come over here with some of kind of the same color, like the phthalo red is a lot of white with phthalo red up here, but I'm just going to take straight phthalo red and just mix that in here too. You can bring it down as soft as you like, just keep working it in. You have to dry off the brush to get the excess paint off of it, you can. Sometimes it gets a little excessive. Thing I don't really do is come back with yellow along here, just because if this cloud is ahead of that sky area there, whatever that might be, clouds or whatever it is, if I bring yellow here, it's going to cut that edge and it's going to blend them together or put them on the same level of surface. Don't really want that to happen, so I just continue to kind of mix it with a dry brush, a dry clean brush. And if you wanted, I just wouldn't touch underneath this area with yellow, but you can still, if you want to add a little bit of a reflection from what maybe is happening down there, you can add some yellow up in here, some yellow and some white. Just to show that it is getting hit by some light that's happening there. I would not go past, the line that was created here for those clouds. Alright, from here I just kind of tweak anything that just feels a little awkward. So another brush I like to take for these types of deals too, it's this, it's got the real rough bristles, and it's good for anything real cloudy, real misty. Just continue to mix these in softly. Scrub brushing it, same technique, nothing different. If you want to take some paint on here, add it in, you can. But the drier this brush is, the better. You can either add a little bit of red shadow down here if you want. kind of repetitive. I don't know if repetitive is a word, but it's very repetitive, and just kind of doing the same thing the whole way through at first. Adding and taking away, and scrubbing, working with colors that you like, colors that you're feeling at the time. Again, I would not work yellow up that way. Keep it down here. Be mindful of what you're going to cover as well with the water, with the lighthouse. You know, some of this might not be seen, but like I always say, I like to stay consistent with what I'm doing. So even if I'm going to cover up all this red that I'm putting in right now, you know, I'm just happy it's there. It's something I'll know is there, even if it's covered and no one else can see it. It completes the puzzle. But if it feels too harsh, you can always push that back in and then come in with some of that color again underneath. See if I can make that color. Red and phthalo blue. There it is. That's a pretty heavy color, so I'm going to add some violet back in here. It's a drastic change, and I don't really want that. Unless you do. You know, if you're conveying the feeling of, you know, say there's the current turmoil that you're painting into your piece, and maybe there was a sudden change, and, you know, that's the area where you want to convey that. You know, there was a sudden change, and things were just out of whack, and then we had to quickly adjust, and you know, maybe that's the feeling that you want right there. Maybe that's what I subconsciously was doing, I don't know, but I'm still gonna work with it a little bit. Just to keep it in form with all the rest of the happening going on here. I can't really teach you your own feelings, but I can teach based off of mine, so maybe that'll give some good examples of where I'm going with this. I'm gonna do kind of a mix of orange here for underneath here. Just because there's a lot going on down here, I don't want that to be necessarily just dark blue. I want to add a little bit of orange there so it can transition a little bit less drastically there. Less is more. Less is always more, so less of the drastic and more of making sense of why there's such a big change right there. I'm really fond of that violet that's happening back in the back, so I'm going to throw a little bit more of that. It's kind of a mix of the violet and the phthalo red, just like this pinkish kind of color. I like that, so I'm going to throw some more in here, just kind of along here, so it's not quite out of the blue. No pun intended. Maybe go slightly darker around here, just a little bit. And there are times I'll just I'll lay down some paint, I'll dry off the brush and rinse it out and everything, clean it up real good, come back in with the dry brush and just continue to work that inward. There we go. And that's feeling a lot better. Maybe there's some things around here maybe too. You can think in layers if you'd like. If you want to think from light to dark, you can do that. We're already doing that because it's red down here and it's blue up here. So throughout, you can also do that with your layers of clouds. So, you know, went from like a white to a pink to a in-between pink and then down to a violet and maybe some things in between. So you can still throw. There's a lot of room to work with stuff like that to make this flow real nicely. But I think the key to this really is take your time, fill out, you know, what you're trying to do. Don't overthink it and don't overwork it, but realize it doesn't come together all at once, all at one time. You're doing this in layers and levels as it dries. A lot of this painting has dried already, other than the places that I have glops put down that I didn't touch again. Other than that, it's really dried as I've gone along. So really take your time, and taking your time, you know, you're gonna find that's how you know when you've taken your time. It's because it's dried and it's working with you and it's not against you. You can still throw some pink down here if you like, some of the phthalo red. That's what I like about this painting too, is all the colors that are used, they all work nicely together too. It's really nice. You can even use a phthalo red with some blue to make a violet. If you don't have violet, you know, there's a lot of these colors you could make without having to have them. So, you know, if you are only working with the primaries, you know, red and pink and blue will make a purple. So, you know, if you blend your red with a white, make a pink, blend it with your blue, you can make a purple. through a little bit right around here. Sad part is I'll probably be covering this up, but as long as, you know, I'm conveying this for others who might use this on theirs, you know, that's good. This brush is pretty much the key to making the clouds look super soft. Oddly enough, as rough as the bristles are, they actually end up leaving a nice kind of misty look to your painting. Alright, so that's pretty much the sky. You know, you can, like I said, come back and add some things if you like. Maybe up here, I'll do some more with some white. As I'm doing this, I'm going to make myself a rule. Don't touch right here anymore, because I want to start getting down the water and the lighthouse. So here where I'm pretty much going to be putting on the base is where I'm not going to touch any longer. But I can still work on kind of the top half of the sky now that it's more dry, and I've worked all of this down here. So, get to go back to some blues. This is my favorite color. Putting down some shades here. Try off my brush again. And continue to work this around. Yeah, that's really feeling very nice. So just stay consistent. You know, if you worked in one place a lot, you can go back to another place and work it if you didn't work it too much. Can't go wrong with that. I'll even throw some violet up here, just a little bit. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of lighter blue right in between here. cool. Now that we spent so much time on this sky, I'm gonna think about adding the base of this lighthouse so that I can maybe put down the base of the ocean waters that are coming from beneath. If you're following along, I hope that this has been helpful and hasn't been too tedious. Just taking your time on it and, you know, have fun with this. This is, you know, if you like a lot of colors, this is a good painting to kind of have fun with and just throw some colors together. You got a whole spectrum here. Thankfully, my video is still going, not cut off. I'm so happy about that. The first half of it is done, and now we are on to the next half here. So I'm keeping in mind that there are still some wet spots here on this canvas, you know, right around this whole vicinity here is still wet. But at the same time, I can use that to my advantage with the lighthouse. So if you want to center your lighthouse, you can. If you want to have a little off center over here, you can. Depends on, you know, your taste, what you like, what you're gonna add. You know, maybe you're gonna add something else that I don't have in my painting here. Maybe you're gonna add a whole nother viewpoint, or another subject, or something. I have little seagulls that are, you know, that are flying on the example here. I have one over here, I have one up here. I do have one way back in the back here, but I don't expect anybody to see that because it is very tiny, and then I have a lot of splash, you know, a lot of droplets from the water and everything. So there are actually 3 that are on there. But you know, you want to keep in mind how you want to set this up. So I'm going to stick with my original here as much as possible, and kind of keep it a little more centered. I kind of like the divide that's happening. Maybe subconsciously I'm thinking about the divide that's happening in the world right now, so maybe that's what that was. But I like that idea here, so I'm gonna keep that intact, and I'm gonna work with kind of the colors that are still wet here, because they're gonna play off of my the bottom half of the lighthouse. And I'm just gonna kind of start it maybe off to the side here, bring it down. You're gonna see through this a little. I'm using white, but you're gonna see through it a lot. I know I just said a little, but it's a lot. And I only really want it to be about this wide here, so it'll be from that end to the other end. Right there. Bring it down. I like to bring this off the canvas just in case the water, you know, I don't know where my water, how far it's going to be exactly just yet, so I'm going to bring this down a little further. It's about right there. Now there's a couple ways you could fill this in. You can off the bat start off by, you know, if you want to keep this rounded, do a little smiley face direction all the way down and through. Or you can just fill it in up and down or side to side, and then come back later with that rounded smiley face kind of direction. That direction is always going to keep things more rounded when you have something that, you know, comes around, as opposed to you know, something that's just flat. So either way, we're going to end up with this technique. But for now, if you just wanted to cover this all in, going straight up and down or straight side to side, just keep in mind it needs to match the lines where it ends. So I'm probably going to stick with up and down for now, and I'll show that example. But again, if you are doing this and you want to do the smiley face, feel free to do that. But I just want to make sure that when I tell you something, that's exactly how it's going to work. No questions here. If you're able, try to keep this line on the very edge as straight as possible. Just keep it, you know, keep it intact. it's gonna, you know, how this splotch is right here because I had the brush and it just kind of etched off to the side a little, you know, that's gonna be easy to make happen. So you always want to make sure the very edge of things, you have that solid line. So like I said, it's gonna still show through the colors in the back, and I'm using that to my advantage because, you know, even though it's a white or off-white or whatever color you would imagine that to be, even though it's got a real light base to the lighthouse, all of the sky around it and the water around it is affecting the tones that you're going to see on this white lighthouse. So, you know, it's still the idea that, yeah, it's white, but everything around it is going to affect because there's so many colors happening. Here's my kitty getting his 5 minutes of fame. Alright, and if you want to base kind of the things that are happening on top, you can, but you don't necessarily have to at the moment. I would just make sure, keep this rounded the way that we're going to be rounding it on the second layer. Even if that just throws you right into already doing it. But you can tell the difference already. You can tell, you know, this is now being more rounded and this is kind of flat. Yeah. Okay. Staying inside the lines here at first. Probably come back through and make sure everything's consistent after. Alright. Can put as many coats on here as you like. You could do 1, you could do 2, you could do 3. Depends on what you want to do. I'll probably do a couple. And then I'll do a couple and then I'll put the final, you know, the final tones that are going to be on top are going to be that third layer. As I'm going, I'm seeing one thing I really want to change at the moment. Right in here. You always want to be careful going back over your sky after you put down something in front of it, because it's really easy to lose the nice consistency that's up there. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily work around the edges of this tower that we just put in here, but off to the side over here, just a kind of minor change, that's alright. There's always a way to bring it back to consistency if you lose it, but that I would have to go over kind of all on its own one day when it happens. But I am very glad to have that as an option, because there was a time when I had no idea you could do that. You could, you know, adjust things still, and was always told, nope, don't touch it after you put it down, because now it's going to be ruined. But I found a way, so that is good. It's very, very good. Starting to darken here for me a little too much. I want to lighten up just a little bit. Okay, so I came up to the edge, and I guess we could talk about it. So I'm just going to continue, even if I hit that edge, just to keep it consistent. And I did. Put it back. Alright. I promise I'm done hitting that up there now. I'm happy. I'm happy with the sky. Okay, so we got the lighthouse, we got the sky. Well, the base of the lighthouse anyway. Got the sky. What we're gonna do now is hit this base of the water, I would say. So, whatever brush you want to use is up to you. I think I'm gonna stick with a fan brush, because I want a different kind of texture than what I've gotten from the sky. It's easy to blend the water in the sky. You always want to convey that there's a difference between them, because obviously in the example, the bottom does not look like it's part of the sky. It looks like water. So in order to make that happen, you almost have to switch up your thinking, and you have to switch up something else, so I choose the brush. So I'm going to go with a fan brush. I'm going to switch my thinking from soft and light to harsh. Soft and harsh. Water's still soft, but it's harsh, and when it hits you, it's not so soft. So I want to think along those lines now. Switch up the thinking. You'd be surprised at, just doing that, how much of a difference you're going to create. I'm going to stick with some phthalo blue here. I really like the darker blue with this water at first. And I'm going to actually throw in some lighter cobalt blue after. Well, let's stick with this for now. I don't think I have any violet. Yeah, I don't think there's any violet in this blue. Or in this water. But there are going to be a few different shades of blue. For sure. So the very bottom is going to be a lot of this dark blue. Really just want it dark. If you want to add red, you can to make it darker. But I'm almost thinking in shapes here as well. So it's kind of a little bit of shapes going on. That's going to be a shape in there. Maybe I'll throw a shape up here. These are all going to be, separate of each other. So if you want to start adding, some different colors as well, definitely can. The way I like to think is the opposite of what we did with the sky. So top's going to be lighter, bottom's going to be darker. In between, we're going to do some different things, but for the most part, it's still going to stay strict to that idea, light to dark. There's some cobalt blue in here now to be the medium. So you got light, medium, dark. Just so everyone can follow what I just said. I have an easier time showing than I do speaking. Alright. So you can kind of see all these levels are happening. Let me get the light on here a little bit better. Okay, can kind of see it. So you see all these different levels of light to dark, top to bottom. Real important to have those. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw just a wrench in the whole idea now. I'm going to go into the cobalt blue, and I'm going to bring a whole nother idea just right here over top. This is another wave, either closer or farther, I don't know. But it's got to be different, so maybe this one will be a little bit of everything. A little bit of light, a little bit of dark, a little bit of... You can even throw yellow in there if you want. Just a whole different idea. I want to make sure these are not colliding and becoming one. I want them to be two separate waves. And from there, if you want to throw, other waves in here, you can. Maybe there's another one coming off over here. Maybe it's going every which way. This technique is a lot of like the scrub brushy one, but it's got more angles to it. So I'm taking this angle and I'm working with whatever side is going on. Taking that angle and working with that angle of the brush. And mostly the edge. Which is far different from what I was doing with the clouds. Which also goes hand in hand with, you want to switch up your thinking, you want to switch up your technique. You want to make something else happen here with the water to make sure it doesn't collide with the sky and look like more clouds. So, because this is kind of a chaotic thing happening, I'm going to approach this with a little bit of that chaos in my mind, where it's just, there's not really a rhyme or reason. There's just a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, a lot of different directions that it's taking. That's the beginning of the water. And from there you can really build up how you like. You can either just take this fan brush and dab and make different things happen. And right now it's gonna look like, the whitewash that's over top of it is gonna stay, but actually it's gonna dry and it's gonna blend in with all these colors that are happening. So when it dries all the way is when I came back and I just took white and I just dabbed it on like I did in the first place. Some of these spots, I wanted to say too, I apologize that I feel like it's been a few weeks since I've done this, but I think it was only 1 week. But apologize for being kind of delayed. I had a lot of busy other things going on, even though we're all on kind of slightly still on this quarantine. I had a lot of ducks I had to get in a row, so that's why I usually will take a little bit longer than expected. So I apologize, but I'm going to try to keep as consistent as possible to do something weekly if I don't do it a couple of times a week. I do have another piece in mind that I would like to do this week if I can get to it. My uncle actually sent it to me, and I love it. So I just need to get it done, and then find time to get it uploaded on here. Alright. So we got some water flowing. So we got the sky, we got the base of the water, we got the base of the lighthouse. We used a bunch of different brushes. And I'll show you these actually. I'll show you these ones that I've used. So for the very beginning, I used this large brush to cover the sky with the different colors. I came in with this brush here to hit some smaller, you know, kind of hone in on some of the areas of the sky and kind of bring them together, you know, accordingly as I saw fit. And then I switched kind of quickly over to this brush right here, and this was a lot of the cloud cover and just softening everything and bringing it together and using the different colors to go back in and hone in on certain areas as well and just soften them up. All three of those brushes were the same technique. They were all scrub brushing real lightly, more of a dry brush, and working on the piece as it dried. So, you know, if it would have been more wet, it wouldn't have been as easy to manipulate. So you always want to keep that in mind. If you're using those brushes and you're scrub brushing, you know, working on a dry surface with the dry brushing technique, it's going to be a lot more efficient. It's going to work with you a lot more than against you. So if you have a area that's really wet, let it dry, and then, you know, then start working over top of it. As you work more and more, you're gonna find kind of the nuances in between where you can space your timing and you can figure out, you know, I can work this long in this area and then come down to this area and work that, and kind of have a nice little workspace or workflow that goes according to how you paint. So always keep that in mind. After that, I went back to this brush here for the base of the lighthouse. As I said, you can draw out your lines of how wide you want it. You can work a smiley face direction, you know, swoop, 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 to keep that rounded, or for the first base of it, up and down, or side to side. But you always want to finish, you know, when we finish the lighthouse, it's going to end with that smiley face swoop to make sure that it stays rounded. You know, I don't really, if you had a ball, you know, I did the soccer ball. That was a video back in the beginning of, you know, that was in probably March. But, so if you look at that, you know, when I do the ball, I don't want it to look flat on a canvas. I want it to look round. So that's why we take those directions, that rounded, nice rounded direction. And that's going to be consistent also with everything that happens on top of this lighthouse when we get to that point. So that was that area. And then I took a fan brush and I came down here with the water, and as I was saying, you think completely different from how you did your clouds, so that you don't end up making clouds just with this fan brush. You want to really, you know, because it's a chaotic scene, because there's water and waves just crashing against this lighthouse, that's how you want to think with the fan brush. You're just real chaotic with it. You know, I did a lot of dabbing. I did a lot of, you know, instead of the dark to light, I went light to dark. You know, if you switch it up in a few ways, it'll be consistent with you, and it will actually turn out to look, you know, not like the sky, for instance. It will work with you. It'll be something else like it's supposed to be. So that was that technique there, and then I went over top with some white and dabbed accordingly, just to start kind of the idea of the foam that flies with the water and everything. But that's not going to be the end of that. I'm going to have to let this dry, come back over top with another layer of white, to make that happen. And there's actually a few fun techniques here that we're gonna go over on the next video for the water for sure. If you've worked with me before or seen, you know, anything that I've done before, you'll know exactly what it is. But if not, then, you know, I have a special treat for that. Gonna work on these birds. The birds are gonna be pretty, I think it'll be surprising because they're not really intricate. They're just a few swipes of a brush in a very specific way. So that'll be cool to show, you know, not having to go super detailed into birds. But you can keep them simple and, you know, they look accurate. Same thing with the top of the lighthouse. It's not going to be too crazy. So, but that'll be all in the next video. We'll take this further, but for now I'm going to let it kind of dry up and prepare me for the next video. So always heed that call when your painting tells you, all right, it's time to let me dry, and, you know, come back a little later. Always listen to that, because if not, you're, you know, if I sat here and did more, I'm gonna be just in a conflict with this painting, and it's just gonna be a nightmare. So let it dry, come back to it. It'll work magnificently, and that'll be all on the next video. So I'll let everybody know when that'll be ASAP. It will be this week for sure. So I'll have that on a status, and look out for that. And thank you for watching, and thank you for just everything. So I will see you all very soon.